The summer of 1871 settled over Texas like a heavy blanket, pressing heat into the earth and drawing dust from every hoofstep. Along the legendary Chisholm Trail, thousands of longhorn cattle shifted restlessly as cowboys prepared for the long drive north to the railheads in Kansas. It was not the first cattle drive, and it would not be the last, but for the men riding that season, it would become the journey that defined what it meant to be an American cowboy. Before sunrise, the camp stirred. Horses were checked, saddles tightened, and the chuck wagon creaked forward to lead the day's movement. The herd stretched wide across the prairie, horns catching the first light like a field of curved blades. A trail boss barked quiet instructions while point riders guided the leaders forward. The rhythm began slowly, hooves thudding against dry ground, leather creaking, spurs jingling faintly. By mid-morning, the heat rose in shimmering waves, turning the horizon into a trembling illusion. The Chisholm Trail was more than a path. It was a test of discipline. A single mistake could scatter the herd into chaos. Cowboys rode flank and drag positions, each responsible for keeping the cattle aligned and calm. Dust-coated faces and filled lungs, and sweat-darkened shirts long before noon. There were no shortcuts. The herd moved at the pace of the slowest animal, sometimes covering only 10 or 12 miles in a day. River crossings were the first great trial. When the herd reached swollen waters, the animals sensed danger. Their hesitation could spark panic, and panic could mean a deadly stampede. Cowboys shouted, whistled, and splashed into the shallows to coax the leaders forward. Once the first few cattle entered, the rest followed in a surge of muscle and horns. Men on horseback fought the current alongside them, boots filling with muddy water. If a steer faltered, a rider risked his life to pull it back into line. At night, the herd bedded down in a loose circle. 2 riders took the first watch, circling slowly in the darkness to keep cattle calm. Coyotes howled in the distance, and lightning flickered far beyond the horizon. One sharp thunderclap could send thousands of pounds of muscle crashing blindly across the plains. Cowboys sang low, steady tunes to soothe the herd, their voices drifting into the warm night air. The long ride had only begun, yet already it demanded endurance few men truly understood. The Chisholm Trail did not care about pride or reputation. It measured men by patience, courage, and the ability to stay steady when exhaustion pressed hard. Under the vast summer sky of 1871, the American cowboy was being defined mile by mile. By mid-season, the drive settled into a relentless rhythm. Days blurred together beneath a blazing sun. Lips cracked from heat, and hands toughened from reins worn smooth by constant grip. Yet no 2 days were ever truly alike on the Chisholm Trail. The prairie carried surprises, and the summer of 1871 proved especially unforgiving. One afternoon, dark clouds rolled in without warning. The wind shifted sharply, carrying the metallic scent of rain. Within minutes, lightning split the sky and thunder shook the ground. The herd grew restless, eyes wide, muscles trembling. Cowboys shouted commands, racing along the flanks to prevent panic. But nature moved faster than any rider. A single thunderclap erupted directly overhead, and the herd exploded into motion. A stampede was chaos in its purest form, thousands of longhorns surging forward in blind terror. The ground trembled like an earthquake. Cowboys spurred their horses alongside the torrent, leaning low to avoid horns while angling the leaders into a gradual curve. The goal was not to stop the herd outright. That was impossible, but to bend its path into a circle until the animals ran themselves back into exhaustion. For hours, men rode through dust so thick it choked the air, risking trampling at every misstep. When the storm passed and the cattle finally slowed, silence fell heavy over the plains. One rider had been thrown but survived with bruised ribs. Another lost his hat miles back along the trail. Yet no one complained. They checked the herd carefully, counting losses, adjusting positions. In that shared struggle, something stronger than fear took root: brotherhood. Life on the trail erased social boundaries. Former soldiers, farm boys, immigrants, and freedmen rode side by side. Skill mattered more than background. A steady hand during a river crossing earned respect faster than words ever could. Around the campfire, stories replaced suspicion. Coffee boiled in blackened pots, and beans simmered in iron kettles. Laughter rose despite exhaustion. Danger returned often. Riverbanks collapsed without warning. Rustlers lurked near isolated crossings. Prairie fires flashed across dry grasslands, forcing hurried detours. Yet with each trial, the riders grew sharper, more unified. They learned to read subtle changes in wind, to anticipate a restless steer before panic spread, to trust the rider beside them without hesitation. The Chisholm Trail was carving more than a route across America. It was shaping character. These cowboys were not heroes in the theatrical sense. They were working men confronting unpredictable forces with discipline and grit. Each mile demanded patience, and each hardship demanded courage. In facing storms and stampedes together, they forged an identity that would come to symbolize resilience itself. Weeks after leaving Texas, the herd finally neared the Kansas railheads. The air felt different, thicker with the promise of markets and money. Wooden buildings appeared along the horizon, and the whistle of a locomotive echoed faintly in the distance. For the cowboys, the end of the drive carried both relief and quiet pride. Driving cattle into town required caution. After months on open range, the sudden noise of civilization could unsettle the herd. Riders tightened formation, guiding longhorns through crowded streets toward holding pens. Townsfolk gathered to watch, drawn by the sight of dust-covered riders and the endless line of horns stretching beyond view. Deals were struck quickly. Buyers inspected animals, weighed prospects, and negotiated prices under the watchful eyes of trail bosses. When the sale concluded, the transformation was immediate. The herd that had defined daily life dispersed into rail cars bound for distant cities. The rhythm of hooves ceased. Cowboys collected their wages, often months of pay and worn bills, and stepped briefly into a world of bright saloons and bustling storefronts. Some celebrated loudly, others remained quiet, already thinking of the next drive. Yet the true reward was not money alone. It was the knowledge that they had completed one of the most demanding journeys in American life. They had crossed swollen rivers, endured storms, and protected thousands of cattle across nearly 1,000 miles. The trail had tested every weakness and strengthened every virtue. Newspapers back east began printing stories of these long drives, describing fearless riders guiding massive herds across untamed land. Illustrations captured wide-brimmed hats, coiled ropes, and silhouettes against sunset skies. The image of the cowboy began spreading far beyond the plains, becoming a symbol of independence and resolve. For the men who rode in the summer of 1871, however, the legend was simpler. It was found in calloused hands, sunburned faces, and the quiet confidence earned through hardship. They had proven that discipline could tame chaos, that teamwork could overcome fear, and that determination could carry a herd and a nation forward. The long ride along the Chisholm Trail did more than deliver cattle to market. It defined the American cowboy as steady under pressure, loyal to his crew, and unafraid of vast horizons. Long after the dust settled and the rails carried cattle eastward, the spirit forged on that trail remained, a lasting emblem of endurance, courage, and the unbreakable will that helped shape the American West.